what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. Today, we are the Men in Black. Do us a solid. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, leave comments in the comments section. Do all of that stuff. It helps. Well, thank you. Thank you in advance. We're talking Quinn Ewers. We're talking NIL money. We're talking about those two things married together because it probably is at the center of any decision that Quinn Ewers makes. Anwar, there's a lot of directions to go in this conversation. At the forefront, we wanted to keep talking about Quinn Ewers because it's the number one topic in the Texas football universe. But right next to it, the number two topic is this announcement that was made yesterday. Long story short, there is an NIL charitable organization called Horns with Hearts, I believe, and they have put together enough money that every offensive lineman starting on August 1st that plays for the Texas Longhorns will make $50,000 annually. That's for every offensive lineman. They don't have to do anything other than to say, yes, we want the money, and then occasionally do probably some videos or show up at a charity event and shake some hands. And, there'll probably be at those events influential donators who, want to meet the people that they've donated their money to. There's a lot of elements of this. Here we are. It really is a brand new age in college football. When the NIL idea was launched last summer as a real tangible thing, we thought we might get to this point. But now that we're here, it's still very jaw-dropping.
It is to a certain degree because, as you mentioned that, Catch, the previous week, I think it's Clark Field Collective donated $10 million, or they've announced that they've got $10 million in pledges to donate to, the student athletes at the University of Texas. And there's been a little bit misconceived notions about how that money is being dispersed. Some people have tried to say that that's all going to the football team. So they've tried to take the $50,000 that you mentioned, Catch, and try to do the math and feel like there's going to be like $100,000 that goes to some offensive line is going to get paid $150. But what's really going to happen is they're going to take that money and disperse it amongst all student athletes, not just football players. We're talking about men's basketball, women's basketball, soccer. They got to figure out how that's going to be dispersed. But so, that's just for clarity for those who keep thinking if the offensive line is going to make $150. That's not true. But in this world, though, Catch, that you're talking about, in this world of NIL and recruiting, there's a couple of things that are happening. One, we're starting to see Texas flexing and starting to be Texas. And that's always kind of been one of my biggest kind of gripes, Catch, about, I feel like Texas is Texas, but then when it's time to flex like Texas, they don't always flex like Texas. They don't money whip people the way that other people money whip. We look at coaching changes, right, that have happened, whether it's the USCs or the LSU. They basically have said, you've got to tell us no. We're going to put so much money in front of you, you must tell us no. And Texas has kind of been like, well, we'll make you a nice offer. But, you know
what it is? Texas likes to talk about being Texas, but they don't want to act like Texas. They are like that dude who loves to talk about fighting. Mm-hmm. And then when it goes down, they're like, oh, well, we should talk. Let's talk this out.
Correct.
Texas loves to talk about how they're Texas. Acting like Texas has been an issue.
Correct.
Until now.
and now we're seeing guys are like, you know what? It's about time to act like Texas. It's about time. We've got all this money lying around. What are we going to do with it? And you know what? And look, if you're one of these BMDs, right? You might donate it directly to a guy for all the things that you talked about, Catch, to be able to have access, to have them at the parties, as opposed to just donating it to the school and having everyone else profit on it. There's a way for this to happen. It will impact recruiting to a certain degree. We'll probably get into that and the Ewers and other people. But essentially what you're starting to see is Texas, especially the big people with money, are starting to say, all right, you know what? Bump it. Let's be Texas. Let's just go ahead and money whip some folks and support our program.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm okay with this. This is a $1 billion industry. The conversation has always been these guys, these kids, these young men, these athletes deserve a piece of the pie. And nobody has ever been able to discern like what should be the piece of the pie. And the conversation was, well, what would it look like if it was just an open market like the rest of America?
Correct.
If college football is like the rest of America, what would it look like? And I think we're finding out that the value, these players have had this kind of value for a long time. And the proof is in the pudding. And it's just not the offensive lineman, this deal, the Horns with Heart and the 50,000 annually that's going to go to them. That got put out when it got put out because Texas is trying to recruit a bunch of offensive linemen and they needed this out now. Signing day is on the 15th. Every position group's going to have 50,000. When it's all said and done, there's not going to be a situation where the defensive line is like, man, we can't even afford a hamburger, and these offensive linemen over here walking around with Rolex. It's not going to happen. Eventually, you're going to see the entire team with NIL deals like this, and then once every position gets taken care of, you'll see more NIL deals stacked on top of it. All of these players are going to be six-figure athletes when it's all said and done. And in a workforce that contributes to billions of dollars, I mean, that's the American way. That America would say, how much money are you making your school? What is it? Oh, well, yeah, you should be paid royally, handsomely for it. And a scholarship should frankly be a perk. It shouldn't be the deal. And I think that, for me, this is for me where things probably should exist. And for those that push against it, and there's a healthy number of people who are like, I don't like this. Suddenly college athletics is like pro athletics. And it's like, how can you be so naive as to believe that payers haven't been getting paid, that coaches aren't making millions, that this isn't a form of professionalism with a very cute marketing slogan, amateurism. Like this notion is so outdated. Eric Dickerson was receiving multiple Trans Ams in his recruitment, allegedly, maybe. Like, I don't know that that's ever, that's the story that's existed, but maybe that never got nailed down. I don't want to get sued by Mr. Dickerson.
Allegedly.
But the Trans Am thing's been out for a while. Anwar, that happened 40 years ago. What is this world that people think has existed where this has all been underground and now it's not? And when you look at the recruitment of a guy like Quinn Ewers specifically, the ability to say, these are the programs that we're hearing are going to exist. These are the opportunities that exist for you. It's a total game changer. Because if Texas is able to say, there's NIL programs that are going to be in place, opportunities that will pay you like a first-round draft pick, and then he goes to Texas Tech and they say, there's NIL money available, but maybe here at Texas Tech, you're going to be paid like a fourth-round draft pick. At least early on, like maybe we can get you more. Maybe there will be more NIL money, but it's a total game changer. And this is Texas building the Death Star. This is it. This is every player. If the TCU is going to be competing with Texas for prospects, Baylor, Oklahoma, if they don't have the money created and in place to match this, advantage Texas. And Texas shouldn't apologize for that.
Well, and here's the thing, Ketch. When it comes to Texas fans, as long as I've been here and probably predates me, it's always been the accusation, right? SEC, they pay their guys. SEC pays their guys. SEC pays their guys. And we're Texas, and we won't do those kind of things. And it was kind of like frowned upon as far as that's concerned. Well, guess what? It's all legal now. We are in an illegal state. Like, there's certain places where at some point, marijuana was illegal. And then guess what? It got legalized. And guess what? You were fine to do whatever you wanted to do at that point, right? So, this is where it's at. Like, it's legal. And now you got to find ways to say, okay, if you're Texas, how do you not fall behind? Like, you should be the leader, quite honestly, in this. It doesn't do you any good to say this is the richest athletic department in the country, but boy, we sure can't take advantage of that NIL stuff. Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, no, you've got the money. Your boosters have the money. And, this is, it's usually a bunch of guys getting together, to getting a bunch of these millionaires and beyond, together to donate certain amount of things and set it up, charitable kind of stuff. So, get your little tax breaks and stuff like that. That way beyond my pay grade. So I'm not quite even sure how that works, Ketch, but I guess it does in some way. So do it. Like, at that point, you should have a group that is saying to Quinn Ewers, hey, you come to Texas, this is what we believe. We've got guys that can give you X. Why not? The university is going to make so much money off of him as it is. We've always talked about it. So go for it. If they're offensive linemen that you're out there considering, say, hey, listen, come to Texas and you're going to make X. Like, I mean, it's legal. So everyone's got to get over the, I don't like paying players. This is today's NCAA. You pay players. That's what NIL is for. NCAA has said, look, you guys can do whatever you want. Just don't ask us for a check.
Yeah, as long as they don't have to pay the money.
You can do whatever you want to do. We aren't going to cut you nothing. But if you can raise the money on your own, fine. But this this CBS money, that's us. This ESPN money, this is ours. Like, all this is us. Y'all can do whatever you want. So if that's the rules, then you take advantage of it.
There's a couple of things, Anwar, that I think happened when the NIL was first announced. I think everybody across the country was mostly caught off guard with regard to, now what do we do? Right? So, and a lot of Texas fans were really upset that Texas didn't have what it has now in place in July, that they weren't forward thinking enough but nobody really was, right? It's not like Alabama announced this kind of program 9 months ago, or actually, God, it hasn't been that long, like 5 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's taken in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of time. That the rules and the structure were announced in the summer. It went live on August 1st, and a couple of months later, they have potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in verbal pledges towards NIL groups, all told, that will, support this new age that exists.
But that's because Texas marketed it wrong, though, Ketch, because Texas gave out the impression that they were going to be, the school that was doing this at NIL. When we came to find out, Ketch, that the school itself can't do anything, but how they promoted their stuff was almost made it seem like the university was going to be the conduit to it.
And everybody had to learn the loopholes.
Correct.
There are loopholes.
Yes.
For instance, look, there's a player on our roster. What can't occur is pay for play. So there's a player on our Orange Bloods roster, one of our football guys. I won't give the name, but they had NIL representation. And one of the things they wanted to build into the deal was, if this player makes first team all Big 12, he gets a $10,000 bonus. And it was like, well, you can't do that. Like, that's what you can't do. You can't do pay for play. And that's the way initially people wanted to set this up incentive-wise. It took a little bit of time for everybody to understand the rules. Like, oh, you can't do that, but you can set up a charitable organization where you can, have $800,000 committed to 16 nameless players. And then all they have to do is opt in, sign a piece of paper, and it's all good. Like, the loopholes had to be explored. I had lunch 6 weeks ago with an incredibly influential Texas booster, someone that has Chris Del Conte on speed dial. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, this guy was like meeting with Del Conte either later in the day or the next day. He approached me and Orange Bloods about being the ones to set this up. Like, hey, because rich guys wanted a place to give their millions of dollars to. They just didn't want to do it. It was like, I don't really want to have my company, and I don't want Apple to sponsor player X necessarily. I don't even want my fingerprints on this. I just want to give my money someplace. And that's what these Horns with Heart organizations are. It's a place now that if Red McCombs wants to give $5 million to recruiting efforts specifically, he can do that. That money can go into a slush fund that's technically a charitable organization. And now we're off. And when I met with this guy like 6 weeks ago, they weren't this far down the road yet with a lot of these programs. This stuff has been getting put together on the fly. But enough really rich guys got together and said, we all are like-minded. None of us want the responsibility. So let's find somebody who can be responsible. And I was like, I don't know who you think I am. That's not me. That's not what Orange Bloods does. But they have found people who are like, shit, yeah, we'll do that. We'll lead that. I don't know who even leads Horns with Heart. All these things are going to be, they'll all have directors, they'll all have talking pieces, but there will be really influential people behind all of these initiatives. And the way all of these things are now being set up, those people don't have to worry about exposure. And that's what it's taking 4 or 5 months to figure out, is how do you do this so that you can just give money and not have to worry about problems. Now they've figured that out, and now they're stacking these programs on top of each other, one after another, and there's no turning back for all the reasons that we've outlined. And there's no way to get away from the fact that this is being created and announced at this time. And bravo to Texas, frankly. Signing day is like less than 10 days away. Quinn Ewers is going to make his decision in a few days, today, tomorrow. Like, we're on watch. And you've got guys like Devin Campbell and Cam Dewberry and Kelvin Banks and a number of big-time offensive linemen that are, up until now, they're having really difficult decisions. Cam Dewberry is really interesting to me because he could have already been, he may end up at A&M, but he could have committed to A&M 12 months ago. He could have committed to A&M 2 months ago. He hasn't committed. He keeps on checking out Texas. Oklahoma somewhat sidelined a little bit by all of the changes that it has had. Suddenly it feels like a Texas A&M battle that there's torn feelings over. It's not a slam dunk. He just wants to go to A&M. The announcement that, like, you step foot on campus on August 1st and you got 50 G's as a minimum. That's a starting point. That is your minimum wage, because there's nothing that will restrict them from being able to still negotiate any deals they want to. They can negotiate a deal with orangebloods.com. I just have a feeling we've been priced out of the market.
Orange Bloods. Hey, Serenity, here's our walk-ons.
Yeah. No, I mean, because these dudes won't have to take bad deals or just any deal whatsoever. Yeah. Now their minimum entry point money is 50 grand. And that doesn't include the Clark Field money, whatever comes out of that. It's an impressive deal. And it makes an impact. I heard from a source yesterday that said that has not gone unnoticed immediately. It's an absolute game changer. Now, look, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Alabama, they're all gonna have their own programs in time. But Texas has the pieces in place right this second to make guarantees to players that other schools haven't, and it has a chance to play a really big role as Quinn Ewers readies to make a decision, and as signing day rolls around, and Texas is trying to close with a number of the top prospects in the entire country. This is more than just a small, thin margin. This potentially is a big margin that has a chance to create a big impact.
Yeah. And by the way, just a quick housekeeping thing. It's before I address everything that you just said. Rob Blair is kind of the front man for Horns with Heart. So he's kind of the guy that I've talked to a little bit. And Nick Shuley is the front man for the Clark Field Collective. So just to give those guys.
But those dudes, that's not their money.
Not their money, but they and that's why I said front man. That's why I said front man. This is the person that,
right? I'm sure they've got a great title.
Oh, yeah. And great connections, clearly. You know,
they sound like two dudes you and I need to get to know.
Yeah, no. and Nick is like a former he's not a former, but he's like an entertainer also. He plays guitar and stuff. You can check him out on his Twitter thing, but he's also really involved in the music scene here in Austin. I was like, but dude, why am I paying for tickets, Nick? Like, let's have a conversation going forward. And now I said, no,
we can be friends.
Yeah, I mean, I need some. Well, of course, that would involve you getting out the house, Ketch, and so then there's that. But you know what, Ketch? There's the thing, though. You know, when one of the questions we kind of ask is, okay, what's the pitch? What's the pitch to recruits to come to Texas? You know, because we know what the Alabama pitch is, we know what the Ohio State pitch is, we even know to a certain degree what A&M's pitch has been, which is come play in the SEC. But when you're coming off a 5-7 season, you know, with some of the things we talked about, Ketch, so playing time, we're like, that's kind of insulting to these elite recruits. Like, they feel like they can play anywhere. You can't really pitch the Big 12, right? That's not really a huge pitch as far as, I'll come here and you can't wait for you to go to West Virginia. I mean, it's not a huge, pick. And, you definitely can't really, pitch to them NFL draft picks, right? I mean, because we know it when the NFL draft rolls around and we start talking about what the Big 12 is versus the SEC will have 70 draft picks. The Big 12 will be somewhere around 12 or 13. And you and I even talked about, we're not even quite sure with some of the guys who have announced they're coming back, who even gets drafted off this Longhorn team in the 2022 draft. So what do you pitch? And quite honestly, Ketch, if you can pitch, hey, come here in August, you get 50 G's to start off with, and that's not including anything else that you could pull off on your own. That's a hell of a place to start, Ketch. You want to get someone's attention? Yeah, money usually does that, Ketch. Like this, we can't act like it doesn't, but money will get someone's attention, and being able to say, hey, these are the things that you're going to be able to make and bank in addition to whatever. I think the university also upped its payouts to players as well. So when you start talking about, hey, 50, 60, 70, 80,000, and depending on the family, not everybody is willing to say, you know what, son, you might make it to the NFL, 4 years from now. So that you should probably just go to said school, right? Go to Ohio State or Bama and have the opportunity. Or you say, look, man, that's 200,000 that you could potentially make in 4 years. Nah, man, we're taking that, and then we'll worry about the NFL when it gets there. Like that is hard to turn down. And a guy like Quinn, Ketch, he's already made, over $1 million through his deals, when he went to, Ohio State. How much more can he make being like the prodigal son that comes back home to Texas? How much more money can he make from folks in here? We've heard some of the numbers. I don't know how much you reported on Orange Bloods, but we've heard the numbers, and it's pretty freaking good. Yeah, and if you want to put together, like, how do you get a guy like Quinn Ewers? Hey, man, look, we got some guys that are going to be here in the room, But hey, there's this other group of people who they may get you 2-3 million at least to start off with. What do you think about that? Make them tell you no.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, in recruiting, no school's ever going to have, if a kid has a Final Five, and then the kid has a list of priorities for him, right? Let's say you've got playing time. Let's say you've got academics. Let's say relationship with position coach. You know, those three things. Girls, right? I mean, everybody's got a different top five of what matters to them. But it's rare when every school is number one in all of those categories. So it's like that. Otherwise, that's how you get an early commitment. Why did you commit to Texas 12 months early? Oh, it's got a great school, and I love the coaches, and God, have you seen the girls? And I love the area. Like, why would I go anywhere else? But a lot of kids, it's like, oh, well, I like Stan Drayton, right? I want to play running back. I like Stan Drayton, but year one, right now, they're pretty packed in the depth chart. But the academics, like maybe they're looking at Stanford, and it's like, well, I like Stan Drayton, but this school's got a school can be number one in one position and number three in another, and then a guy's trying to figure out how do you decide? That's why these things are hard. What Texas has been able to do on the NIL front is this will be in the top five, right? Like, how much money can I make? And at this point, Texas, they can't they can't make everybody like their position coach the best. Maybe, but you can't make a kid. You can't make a kid say Texas has the best depth chart position for me. But what you can say is, where can I make the most money? And right now, for a lot of these kids, there's an actual guarantee in place that makes Texas that answer. And it's just a piece of the decision. But where that ranks on how you make your choice will be different for every kid. But if there's a kid that's like, hey, I got to pay my family could use some cash. Like we have a hard time making ends meet every month. Then maybe how much money you can make goes up the list of rankings.
Sure.
And this is Texas. If there's going to be a list and there's going to be a rankings, you might as well be number one, if at all possible. And it's a major advantage that on this thing that will probably be in the top five of considerations for most kids, that Texas right now is the place that kid knows, oh man, August 1st, if I'm an offensive lineman, I'm like, just got to make it to August 1st, baby. August 1st, then I'm getting the benzo. Like whatever it is, it's a known definitive, and Texas is smart. Texas, for the first time, as a leader, they are being proactive, and it's probably going to end up making a big difference. I think there's a very good chance that they'll end up with a commitment or two in this recruiting class that they may not have otherwise received had they not done this thing. And it's crazy to me because in the past, all this money could have just been in a briefcase, but it would have been illegal, and it would have jeopardized careers. And, it was dirty. This is this is pop music. This is as mainstream as it gets now. And if Texas isn't first on this front, their fan base is going to forever wonder why. And they don't have to. It's not right now. Texas fans can feel good about, they might've went 5-7, but right now they are on path to win the national championship with regard to NIL funding.
Yeah. And one of the last things I'll say to that, Ketch, as you were talking, I started thinking about it. This also will be have an impact in the future on the transfer portal. Because are you walking away from your cash to go to another program? And a lot of these guys don't transfer up. Most of these guys who leave the program transfer down because they want their playing time. And I get it. But now you got to really, really make that choice. Like, all right, am I going to walk away from, because they were saying offensive linemen to make it 50. At some point, like you said, everyone's going to probably make something. So each position group, it will make X amount of dollars. You walking away? You leaving it? You going to leave that money on the table and go to another program and hope for the best? Or are you going to say, man, maybe I should just graduate and go as a grad transfer? Like that needs to be your plan. Like, go as a grad transfer, make your money, so on and so forth. But outside of that, I think you might also see, if you got guaranteed money, you might see some guys pumping the brakes on that whole transfer portal thing and stay in. And you're like, man, this coach is an asshole. But boy, look at here. I mean, I just made 80,000 this year. Do I really want to go to UTSA? Do I really want to go to
Sam
SMU?
Houston State never looked so shitty.
there's not a program that you want to go to the transfer portal for unless you're trading up, and most people don't trade up. So that was just kind of my final thought.
Hey, my final thought, last thing, think about Jacoby Windman, the kid that you did the UNLV transfer.
Yeah.
Who visited Michigan State last weekend, is scheduled to take an official visit to Texas this weekend. He is, in my view, an instant starter at linebacker next to DeMarvion Overshown next year. That this would be one of the best linebackers really on the West Coast, on the western side of college football this season. An incredibly productive guy. 12 tackles and 3 sacks as an inside linebacker against San Diego State tells you all you need to know. He visits Michigan State, who almost certainly doesn't have NIL funding in place the way Texas does. And he may end up having to make a decision where Texas is saying, hey, don't worry about it. By August 1st, every position player on the team is going to be making 50 grand. Like, this is just the first one that's announced. But you can take it to the bank, 50 grand at a minimum if you come play at Texas. Michigan State probably isn't able at this point definitively say, yes, we can do that too. It sounds like a huge advantage. He ain't 18. He's 21. He's like a third, fourth year guy. Money, paying bills, cell phone being. I knew a kid 20 years ago that sold his Big 12 championship ring because he needed to pay his cell phone bill. That's what these they can eat for free, but some of these dudes don't have money. And there will be guys that it'll be impossible for some of these guys to turn down the money. And having something that's impossible for a guy to say no to is literally what these coaches have been. That's what you look for. What do we have that he can't say no to? Stanford has academics. That their education is significantly better and worth more than Oklahoma's education. Same deal, go to school for free. It's not even. This is a weaponized new tactic where Texas can have a major advantage. And I know this, Jacoby Windman didn't commit to Michigan State over the weekend. He might just want to hear the pitch.
Yeah.
He might just, how much did you say? And he may go back to Michigan State and say, hey, can you guys do this? And they say, well, we can, but what do you mean, but? Well, it's not set up yet. Oh, okay. It's a big deal. And look, we'll be talking about this for the rest of this week. We'll be talking about this in the months to come. It's the new age of college football, and Texas at 5-7 is not going to a bowl game. So it's real easy to place your focus right now, all of it, on what's happening behind the scenes in recruiting and the build-up project that is this Texas football program. This money NIL thing is not an insignificant piece of it. For myself and Anwar Richardson, do us a favor. What do you think? Would you turn 50 grand down? How much would it take if one school's offering 50? but they have a better education. How much money would the school with the better education have to give you to make it even? That's what I want to know in the comments section. Would you take 25 grand in Stanford, for instance, over 50 grand in Texas a year? Or are we making too much out of the money? Let us know. I know what Deion Sanders would say. Have you seen that commercial with him and Saban?
All the Aflac commercials.
Yes. Where he made that song like "Showing Me the Money" or whatever.
It must be the money.
But that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That song showing up 30 years after it was a nothing song when it was made. Maybe my favorite thing about 2021 that must be the money has made its way into an Aflac commercial. That's the age that we're in. Like I said, for Anwar Richardson and myself, thanks for watching the video. Give us some likes. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Later.